Hello everyone and welcome back to Fly From Home. Very good New Year and a belated Merry Christmas to all of you out there in YouTube land. And new year, new me, I thought I'd jump in and do something completely different to what I've done before. No, I'm obviously lying. I'm here in the iFly Jets 737 MAX 8, something that people keep requesting me to go and fly. So I've picked it up. I have taken the plunge and bought it so that I can do what I've been doing for the last couple of videos, really, and just checking these jets out in Microsoft Flight Simulator and seeing how realistically they handle. Now, the last one we did was a 737 MAX in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and it was pretty awful, really. It wasn't great, put it that way. It's a default aeroplane. You can't expect too much out of it. So I am expecting a lot more out of this. Now, full disclaimer, this is my first flight in this airplane. I've literally just loaded in, checked that my controls sort of work, which they sort of do, and set it up and taxied out. I have no idea whether I've done everything right or not, because I don't fly a MAX in real life. I fly the NG and the Classic, which, technically speaking, are the same type rating, so legally I could jump into one of these with a very small amount of training and go off and fly it. But there are quite a lot of differences with this aeroplane. Now, what we're going to do is the same as my first one of these in the PMDG 737, so it's a really direct comparison for you. We're going to take off runway 09 East Midlands. We're going to follow the Trent Papa departure, which we've got here on this lovely, very handy tablet, which is very straightforward SID. It just takes you around the corner and up to the Trent VOR at 6,000 feet. And we're going to do some general handling checks on the aircraft to test how realistic the flight dynamics are. And then we'll come back round and hand fly an ILS in to land, hopefully. No promises, though. So I'm going to be commenting from the point of view of somebody who flies the 737 in real life. I'm a first officer for a UK-based airline. So I'll basically be comparing it to the NG, because from what all the literature says, it's supposed to handle almost exactly like an NG. So we'll see. I'm not 100% sure that it is going to do exactly the same things as the NG, certainly on the stall, but we'll see how that goes later. So, without further ado, let's line up and go, shall we? We'll do our before takeoff checklist first, though. So cabin we'll assume is secure. We can do one of them. Flaps are 5 planned, 5 indicating green light. Very strange to have the flap indicator on a screen there. Stab trim is set to about 6.5 units. That's what's right. And the takeoff briefing we'll assume is all done. I'm not going to bore you with one of those. So let's get the brakes off. Now, first of all, ground handling. So I said Microsoft Flight Sim 24, the ground handling is quite good, and it's a bit of a step up from Flight Sim 2020. This aeroplane actually handles on the ground really, really well. You need minimal power to get it rolling as long as it's not incredibly heavy.
09.
Thank you, lady. I assume we're clear for takeoff, so that's going to go on. They're going to go on. That's going to go off. You have to kind of use the scroll wheel for a lot of this, which is quite strange. A little bit different to the PMDG. So having to steer and do the line-up checks at the same time. Usually the BA
On runway 09.
monkey in that right-hand seat to do all these bits. We'll have weather on my side. Other guy can take terrain. Make sure he's got his traffic on as well. There we go. I'm just going to hold it on the brakes here while I just make sure I've completed all of these bits. That's on TARA. Okay, and that needs to be straight and steady. There we go. Okay. So, first of all, things to notice. Rotation rate. Some people have made a comment on, like, oh, your rotation rate seems a bit fast. You're supposed to get the nose up to 15 degrees inside of, it's about 6 seconds on an NG. I'm assuming it's the same on the MAX. So, it's about 3 degrees per second that you want to be going up at. And that's what you're looking for. So I should be pitched up to 15 degrees in about 5 or 6 seconds. I'll say 6. The airspeed at that point should be about V2 plus 20. V2 is 142, so pay attention to that. And other than that, I guess let's just see what happens, shall we? So let's let it roll a little bit, because that is the Boeing recommended takeoff procedure. And then set thrust. Bit of forward pressure on the yoke. Knots, checked. It's quite easy to steer it down the runway, that's quite nice. V1 rotates. Positive right. Relatively drama-free. The airspeed looks to be in about the right place. Rotation was maybe a little slow, but my fault rather than anything. So, VL now, we're passing 800, so N1, and start to speed up as well.
Descend, descend.
I'm going to ignore that TCAS RA.
Traffic.
Which of course would be a very bad thing to do in real life, but we're not using the...
Maintain vertical speed. Maintain. Adjust vertical speed. Adjust. Traffic.
Cool to see that it's got the full TCAS RA set up in there. So speed check flaps worn.
Bank angle. Bank angle.
No. It's good to see that it's got that as well. Me being a garbage pilot while I'm trying to move the flap lever. And flaps up. This would definitely be a report to chief pilot experience in the real world, but we're playing flights and we can have some fun. So we're going up pretty quickly. We've got a reasonable load on board the aircraft. It's a sort of middling weight. The fuel configuration is very strange at the moment. It's got about 6 tons in the center tank and only about 4 tons in the wings, which in the NG, I'm pretty sure would give you a config warning, because you're supposed to have full wing tanks before you have anything in the center, but never mind. Okay, that's pretty drama-free though, other than the dodgy flying. It certainly seems to handle very smoothly, which is nice. Not a great deal of thrust pitch when the power came back on the level off there. We'll test that a little bit more in a second. So let's do the flow for flaps up, no lights. So that would be, I guess they stay on. We don't have any retracts. These can come off, and the order brake, that can come up too. Okay, cool. So yeah, first impressions, like I said, very, very smooth handling aeroplane. It's very easy to fly accurately as long as you're paying attention, not trying to do some other task in the cockpit, which normally would be completed by another person. So let's take it up to slightly higher speed. Let's go 220. I'm going to go auto throttle disconnect now. Take over the throttle myself because I want to do some assessment of the thrust pitch couple. So you've probably heard me talk about this before if you've watched any of my other videos, but aircraft with underslung jet engines suffer from something called a thrust pitch couple. So, well, there we go. If I was to advance the thrust levers like that quite rapidly, then the aircraft will quickly sort of pitch into a climb, and the reverse is also true. So if I reduce the thrust levers rapidly, the aircraft should pitch nose down. So we've got set about sort of 63–64%. Should be about right sort of thrust setting for 250 knots, which is what we've got at the moment. So let's bug it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it trimmed, and I'm going to close the thrust levers and see what the nose does. So, okay, so the nose is coming down. Yeah, the nose is coming down a bit. Might expect a touch more than that. Let's add the thrust back in now. So I'm not going to touch the yoke again. I'm just going to go straight up to max continuous. Yeah, okay, you can see the nose shooting. I mean, you can't really see now because we're in a cloud, but if you look at the instruments, just rolling the wings to keep them level. See how the nose is now pitching up through 10, 15 degrees. I've put no pitch input in whatsoever. We're now doing 6,000 feet vertically, so let's come back on the power again and level off. Yeah, okay, so thrust pitch couple is definitely there. Now, bear in mind that the amount of thrust pitch on a 737 is often very dependent on the variant, because the variants have very different, I'm just going to go into heading cell now. The variants have very different engine specs and positions. So the thrust pitch couple in the Classic, for example, is a lot worse than the thrust pitch couple in the NG. So it's possible that the Max is a little different, because it just feels like it seems right when I add power, but when I reduce power, there's not a great deal of nose down, so that seems a little suspect to me. But like I said, it could be perfectly accurate for the Max, and it's just that this is one of these things that is a little different. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate a steep turn. So a steep turn is any kind of turn, basically like we did on the way out on the SID, over a 30-degree angular bank. The default amount is 45 degrees angular bank, so that's the little tick here on the PFD. So that's what we're going to be going to. We're going to be going all the way around back onto this heading, maintaining hopefully 6,000 feet. I'm going to add that thrust back in again, and we'll go straight in. So just going to pop the flight directors off actually, because it's going to be giving me some erroneous
bank
info
angle,
as I do this.
Angle,
there's the bank angle warning.
Bank angle.
Going into the red as we hit 45 degrees. Obviously not a maneuver we do in the real aeroplane, because it would upset the people or the parcels a little bit too much. But we do practice this in the simulator. Interesting display indications we've got there on the PFDs, showing us to which way to roll the wings level. That's quite clever. And I'm having to add, yeah, a reasonable amount of nose-up trim. Now, normally you would never trim into a turn in the world of light aircraft, but in the world of big aircraft, the forces are simply too much. See, I'm allowing the speed to get away from me a little bit. The force is simply too much to just hold this. It makes it very, very difficult to just hold this in. So normally you give it this kind of crazy maneuver, you would add a bit of trim into the turn. Then take it back out again when you roll wings level. Okay, so I'm going to anticipate this by a bit, by about sort of 15 degrees, and start to roll wings level. You see the 7.3 is quite responsive in roll when you want it to be. So that's more than enough anticipation to get us back out onto straight level. Okay, cool. Yeah, that felt pretty good. Felt like the right amount of back pressure. It does feel like we've got quite a lot of thrust available, but I mean, again, might be accurate for this aeroplane. I don't know. I do not fly it in real life. So the next thing I want to check is the relationship between yaw and roll. So as any pilot of a light aircraft will tell you, the secondary effect of yaw is roll, and the secondary effect, of roll is yaw. Now, in a swept wing aircraft, that becomes a little more weird, because in a swept wing aircraft, you get an extremely strong roll response every time you apply rudder, which is why we kind of touch the rudders very minimally in a swept wing aircraft. really only in a crosswind to decrab and maybe a tiny bit in the turns just to help out a little bit sometimes, just to trim out some slight asymmetric forces or something like that. And obviously when we have an engine failure, we have to use the rudder a lot as well. So what should happen if I smack the rudder is we get an extremely strong roll response. Now this is something that Microsoft Flight Simulator struggles to represent most of the time, so I'm not expecting miracles, but we'll see, shall we? So I'm going to hit the left pedal, I'm not going to touch the yoke at all, and we'll just see what happens. Okay, so yeah, that's basically the Microsoft Flight Simulator default roll and your behavior. So you can see the nose, yours, and then the aircraft starts to roll, and it does roll quite aggressively, so that's reasonably good. But what would happen in the real airplanes, I'm just going to simulate it using the ailerons this time, is you'd hit the rudder and you'd immediately get like a
bank angle,
one of those coming in, and that's not what we've got here. So fair play, I don't think it's possible in Microsoft Flight Simulator to display that kind of behavior accurately. Hopefully Flight Sim 24, once it's worked out its life and decided to, you know, actually fix some of the problems with it, we'll get some of these accurate aircraft in the sim, and it will have the physics capable of giving us that kind of behavior. But at the moment, not quite. But it's not far off. The biggest difference, the biggest discrepancy in terms of the flight handling characteristics that you would notice flying this versus flying the real thing is in a crosswind landing when you go to decrab, because you kind of have to automatically, as soon as you decrab from the crosswinds using the rudder, you have to apply aileron to keep the wings level, and that's not really gonna work in this simulator. So that's probably the biggest downside of the flight characteristics, but I don't think iFly can really do anything about it. Now, the next thing that we should probably have a look at is the stall characteristics. Now, I know the 737 MAX is quite infamous for how it behaves at the stall. So that is the MCAS system, the Maneuver Characteristic Augmentation System, that literally is there to trim some of the forces out of the yoke that are experienced at very high angles of attack, which are caused by the bottoms of the engine nacelles causing lift. So it can kind of hold the nose, well, it can reduce the stick forces a little bit, and make it a little bit harder to push into a recovery. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to close the thrust levers and just pitch to maintain, and as you can see, the airplane is slowing down very slowly at this sort of speed, even more slowly than an NG, and that's all to do with how slippery this airplane is, especially at this sort of speed range, which is a bit of a nightmare really when you're trying to slow the thing down and then lose some height as you're coming into land if ATC cut you a little bit tight. So just kind of manoeuvring the airplane to keep it in the general area near Trent VOR so we don't get too far away. But what I'm expecting to see is that the airplane behaves very, very benignly at the stall. There's no like dramatic wing drops or anything like that, and that the nose does come down once it stalls. I'm going to add a little bit of nose up trim here to just help me hold it at this slightly unnatural attitude. Now the airplane's going to start getting unhappy in a second, then giving us all sorts of indications that we're getting close to the stall.
Airspeed low. Airspeed low.
There we go. See how much trim I'm having to use to hold the airplane in this attitude. There's the stick shaker. She's not gone yet. That's loud, Jesus. Try and really force her into it. Okay, yeah, there she goes. You see the nose is coming down sort of quite slowly, but I've got full back stick and the nose is pitching down, so we are stalled. So let's recover. Reduce nose attitude. see it's quite easy to pitch into a secondary stall. I'm just adding the power in. I've added it quite slow, maybe a little bit too quickly really to be sort of perfect technique, but you're trying to avoid allowing the thrust pitch couple to take you into a secondary stall, which I didn't really manage to do that time, but close enough. Pitch down a bit, try and maintain a sensible speed while we recover. So yeah, it's a pretty realistic stall as far as a 737 is concerned. Certainly as far as the NG is concerned, again, disclaimer, never flown the MAX, never likely to fly the MAX unless a cargo variant comes out. There's 6,000 feet, so we're just going to reduce power. Yeah, there certainly is less of a reduction in, maybe, I don't know. I'm just trying to work out for myself if that reduction in power is an appropriate reduction in nose up force versus what we'd usually have, but might be about right. What you can kind of do in the real aeroplane is that as the thrust levers come back to level off from a climb, you can almost just allow the nose to drop if you're hand flying with the auto throttle in. You just allow the nose to just kind of drop without any inputs from yourself. And then actually, even though the nose is coming down, you almost have to add a little bit of up trim to compensate for the loss of that thrust pitch. So it is quite a significant amount of force that is applied. But again, I'm talking classic, I'm talking NG. So max, it may be noticeably a little less than that, I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm just going to set up real quick for the ILS, and I'll get back to you once we're on the way in. So, quick update. I just had a quick look at the winds, and it looks like it's kind of swung around a little bit, and it's now favouring runway 27. So we're going to approach and land on the opposite end. I've got it all set up here as far as I can tell. So let's very quickly brief through it. So 109.35 should be on both boxes, which we've got. 268 on the courses, which we've got. Barrow minimums for Cat 1, 482. 482 sap on mine and the first officer's side. It's a 3-degree slope, high intensity 2 happy to expect on the left hand side. It's a nice long runway, probably vacates about the middle point. I forget, Mike I think is the name of the taxiway, can't quite remember, but we'll go water break 2, that should be more than enough to get us off there. We're going to try and sort of CDA it down a little bit, but the workload is going to be extremely high for me. Because I'm going to try and do as much hand flying as I can, so forgive me if I sort of baby the approach a little bit, but I'm just going to refresh that and then pop it in LNAV. And then I guess we just trust LNAV and wind it down to 2,000 feet. Now, not something that you'd normally do in this country, but we're going to be in the lap of the VNAV LNAV gods now, and we'll see what happens. So FMC speed VNAV path. And we're also descending to an altitude, so let's come off standard now. Sure we got that set. 1037 is now the Barrow minimums. Using the magic beaky. Right. Okay, let's do the descent checklist. So descent pressurization, landing altitude set, 350 feet we'll call it. Recall is checked. Auto brake set 2. Landing data bug to VREF 30, 147. Barrow minimums 482. And approach briefing complete, so that's the descent checklist complete. We can do the approach checklists as well. Now we're on QNH. So nav aids, set IMEW. No, interesting. It's actually identing the other end. So this could be incredibly dramatic when we get a little bit closer to the runway. So we'll keep an eye on that. Might just be a flight simism, but we are getting the wrong ident out of that. Altimeters QNH 1037 set and cross checked. Its approach check is complete. So, what do you guys think of this this aeroplane? It certainly looks nice, doesn't it? It's got the they've got the interior textures very, very nicely modelled. I wonder if does the door? Oh, the door opens. Check that out. Take note, PMDG, I guess. There's a few dodgy textures back there, I guess, but no, for the most part, very cool. Is it locked? Oh no, can't do that. There's a little mirror as well, but I think that's just a PNG because we appear to be on the ground in that. Okay, so let's start her coming down. See how she's struggling to get the speed back to 220 while descending. That's pretty damn realistic, to be honest. There's a number of things we could do about that. We could throw some speed brakes out. We could try throwing some drag out in the form of the flaps, although that's not always the best idea because they're not amazing speed brakes until you get out to about flap 10. What would I do? Probably a little bit of speed brake just to get the to help the speed back a bit. But I mean, we're not too far above what's being requested there, so I wouldn't start getting worried just yet. About 500 feet below what the profile is supposed to be, so banked a little bit of altitude up. So a little bit of a hash of that turn. Seems like it's going back again to sort of follow this profile. Sound of the trim wheel is pretty nice in this aeroplane, I must say. Not sure why there's an FCOM down there. Normally, you'd normally want your QRH down there, not an FCOM. That's basically like the user manual for the 737, and the QRH is the oh no, everything's broken, what do I do manual, which is usually a bit more urgent. And generally, the captain, the first officer, would have a copy of that down in these pockets here on each side of the quadrant. Certainly at our airline they would. Yeah, I'm just going to go VS briefly and slow that rate of descent down a touch. Just going to knock that restriction out there. Probably stick us a bit more close to the profile. Now, we never 100% trust this thing. There's always a bit of basic maths going on in the background. Just looking at the progress here. So if you look at the distance to go, this is total track mileage. It's given us about 21 miles to get before we touch the runway. And we're 5,000 feet in the air, so we got more than enough, basically. It's all 3 times stable, you do, really. We could be up at 7,000 feet at this point and still make it down onto the runway, and we're sort of 2,000 below that, more than 2,000 below that, so quite happy with that. Obviously, you have to factor in a little bit of extra distance for slowing the aeroplane down, all that kind of stuff, especially with a slippery aeroplane. I mean, the NG is slippery enough, so I'm sure the Max is even more so. You can see the profile bar starting to come back down again, so when that gets to the middle, I'll just pick it up with VNAV, and it should take it round. Now, we don't generally do this sort of thing in the UK, but in Europe, this is reasonably common. You quite often get told to fly to a waypoint and then just establish yourself on the ILS. I Oh, that's changed. That's nice, I guess. At least we're going to get an ILS frequency, so that's side entered. Anyway, yeah, quite often you will get told to retard being up down, to just route to a waypoint and get yourself onto the ILS, and seemingly it works just as well here. I'm just going to start getting it slowed down to min clean now and start throwing some flap out. I meant to go flap 1 there, but I think it's gone flap 2. The my flap lever doesn't seem to work particularly well with this aircraft. Let's go with that, and that's probably going to be flap 5. Yeah, there we go. So let's start just using the speed intervene function to interfere in VNAV, rather than having to plug speeds into the FMC. Starting to come around the corner now. Now normally with our airline we're not allowed to intercept a localizer from LNAV. We have to go heading select and then LNAV because the Classic can't do it. So we can't sort of mix procedures and do it in the NG as well. But I'll be a bit naughty today and just go straight from LNAV to Vorlock. You can see we have got Vorlock a little bit outside of normally where you pick that up. But quite expect it to come in quite so quickly. I'm going to go back to vertical speed now because I can see the glide slopes a little bit above where we are. I'm just going to slow that rate of descent slightly. As soon as we're inside of half scale deflection on the localizer, we can arm the glide. Coming down a little bit more. You okay, hun? She's having a little bit of a think about things, which is slightly weird. Happy with that we are inside, even though that is now coming in. Look. Okay, cool. So once she's leveled up, let's take over manual control.
2500.
Rad out alive, QNH set. Manual flight, manual thrust. Gear down. Flap 15. On the speed brake, those. Okay, that feels pretty good. Just approach altitude set. Can feel the sort of balloon as the flaps come out. Let's go final approach speed pretty early, so flaps 30, final approach speed 152. And landing checklist, cabin is secure, engine start switch is continuous, speed brake is armed, landing gear is down. Flaps are way, not quite there. .30 plan, 30 indicates green light. Let's assume we're clear to land. Yeah, it feels very nice and smooth, and yeah, definitely feel that thrust pitch couple as I add a little bit of thrust there just to keep the speed at reference. So that's nice. I wish you would shut up. There we go. So yeah, feels pretty good. Getting a little bit of
1000
winds, that's interesting, but not unexpected. Let's check. Man lands. 482 Barra, missed approach altitude set.
Approaching 27.
Thanks, lady. Bit of crosswind from the left, so probably going to get some turbulence coming over the tops of the terminal buildings here. Making very small thrust adjustments, not to unsettle the aircraft too much. Three reds seam, but that's not agreeing with
400.
what I'm seeing on the glide slopes. I'm ignoring the PAPI.
Approaching minimums. 300. Minimums.
Land.
200. $100.
Getting a little rough now, as we predicted.
50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Okay, yeah, very, very nice. Bit of reverse. Okay, that isn't working, so manual brakes. Knots. Okay, yeah, the landing felt very, very good. It was at least as good as the PMDG, maybe even better. I don't know. Started to get into that little bit of rough stuff, which is very realistic as you start to get close to the ground of East Midlands. I've landed here quite a lot in real life. And then just coming into the flare, just that slight tweak, that's all you need on the NG and the presumably the Max as well. The Classic is only is more of a sort of traditional flare. But no, impressed. Very, very good indeed. In terms of a flight simulator aeroplane, I think we're very spoiled at the moment because there's these extremely good representations of complex jet aircraft in simulators these days, and it's almost as realistic as flying the real thing. So hats off, iFly, you've done a great job with this aircraft. Very pleased with it. I'm have to do some more flights in it in my spare time and get more of a feel of it and work out some of the systems and things like that. If you want to see more content with this aircraft, please let me know, and I'm more than happy to make some more videos, given that I've spent all the money to buy it now, so I may as well get my money's worth. But yeah, let me know what you think of this aircraft, what you think of the video, and what you'd like me to do next time. If you'd like me to do some more airliner stuff or more light aircraft stuff or whatever, or if you want me to take another look at Flight Sim 24, God help us all, then let me know, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.